It must be nerve-wracking, Dr. Driver, not just for you and me, but more particularly for Julian's family and for Julian himself. Set the scene for us as we await the decision tomorrow.
I hope you can hear me, George.
Yes, very well.
Thank you very much for having me on and for repeatedly making Julian's case, because, as you know, the mainstream media are being really quiet about the issues that are at stake. And while there is widespread support for Julian across all the human rights organizations now and across all the mainstream media even, not enough is being said about what Julian revealed and why he is in this situation. And the situation right now is one of something called lawfare, where you conduct war through the law. And the war that is being conducted in respect of Julian is to slowly wear him down, death by 1,000 cuts. And as you pointed out, he suffered a stroke in prison. He is quite unwell, and yet he is being put through a horrendous process, while at the same time, the real war criminal, Tony Blair, is being knighted and honored by the Queen. The situation with Julian is such that at the moment, he won his case at the magistrates' court stage to not be extradited to the United States. The US government then appealed that decision at the High Court and won. And now the next stage is for Julian to be given permission for his case to be taken to the Supreme Court. And that permission is given by the very same two judges who took the decision at the High Court level that the original decision on Julian should be undone, and indeed that permission should be given to extradite, or it'll go back to the lower courts for that to then go to Priti Patel to put the papers forward. Now, there's another side to this, that Julian's story and his arguments have never been really properly heard. And that's what's called a cross appeal. And so if Julian wins tomorrow, i.e. they allow him to appeal to the Supreme Court, then that appeal will continue and we'll see what the Supreme Court says. If Julian loses, it goes back to the magistrates' court to be rubber stamped and then sent on to Priti Patel. At that stage, his lawyers can then launch what is called a cross appeal to contest the other four grounds of the lower court verdict that they lost. So I hope that makes some sense as to where we are.
It does. But I'm right in saying, Amantai, that even a victory tomorrow almost certainly means another year or more of incarceration in Belmarsh for a very sick prisoner.
Indeed, and he's suffered over a decade of arbitrary detention, and the last 3 years of which have been at Belmarsh. At the heart of all this is this lack of recognition within the British courts that Julian sought asylum in the Ecuadorian embassy, that his life was at stake. Now, we know from information that has been available through Yahoo News, 30 US government insiders have now confirmed that the United States planned to murder him or kidnap him from the Ecuadorian embassy. So he is now being released on the basis of assurances by the US government. And this is this very same government and the very same CIA and FBI who will be responsible for determining the conditions of his treatment in the US. So it is all these people who tried to kill him who are now being, in a position of control. So, the UK is not recognizing the fact that he sought asylum from these murderers. And it's very distressing to watch this injustice taking place before our eyes, with all these bewigged judges and these fantastic old buildings and this talk of the rule of law, when actually what it is murder in plain sight.
if it goes to the Supreme Court, will the Supreme Court hold effectively a hearing on the cross-appeal issues also, or only on the narrow grounds?
I believe it is only on the narrow grounds at this stage. The cross-appeal process, it depends on whether Julian's lawyers have, I guess there are various elements to this, but my understanding is that the cross-appeal process is likely to only be activated at the point at which Priti Patel says extradite. And Julian's lawyers have already put in their intention to cross-appeal, which has been lodged with the courts, and the courts have acknowledged that. But at this stage of the process, what is going to the Supreme Court to be looked at is the High Court decision and whether that should stand. Because if the Supreme Court says, no, the High Court decision was wrong, then the lower court verdict presumably stands. It's all very interesting because much of this is, as in much of Julian's case, most of these things have not been seen before. We haven't seen a journalist prosecuted under the Espionage Act. We haven't seen a journalist seeking asylum because somebody's trying to kill them. And then when we haven't seen that journalist being tortured through the British justice system in such a plain and open way. And we haven't seen the mainstream media colluding in that torture by smearing and destroying him while he was being tortured.
Now, I'm assuming that you and other campaigners will be outside the court tomorrow. Tell us the details for anyone who can get down there.
Certainly. The Committee to Defend Julian Assange and Don't Extradite Assange, I guess, will both, the committee is the grassroots group and Don't Extradite Assange is the formal campaign, will both be outside the court from 9 a.m. tomorrow morning. So if anybody wants to be at the Royal Courts of Justice on the Strand, that's the place to be.
At 9 a.m.?
At 9 a.m., from 9 a.m. onwards. The pronouncement will be at 10:45 at the court. There will be a number of us who will be inside the court, myself as a legal observer, and I hope many journalists. But there will also be a vast number of supporters, I hope, because it's very difficult in this process to get supporters outside the courts. Firstly, because the COVID regulation was being misused, and thereafter, because we get to know at the very last moment that the hearing is taking place on the Monday. For example, we only found out on Friday that we would get the pronouncement on Monday. So to organize people at this time when everybody's quite isolated is quite difficult. So any support that those who are in London or indeed outside can give by being outside the court is much appreciated. We need to make the government see, as we have done in Kill the Bill, that the people care.
Dr. Driver, thank you very much indeed. I hope that we can celebrate at least partial good news tomorrow. Thanks very much indeed for joining us.